Welcome to a deep dive on Jeremy Rifkin,
Jeremy
a
Rifkin.
guy who's been called both a visionary and a radical
Mm.
for his critiques of science, technology, and really the fabric of the modern world.
You know, it's interesting how Rifkin kind of bridges this gap between like a sharp economic analysis and passionate activism.
Yeah,
You know, you don't often find someone who's writing these best-selling books that are influencing world leaders and at the same time, leading protests against the very systems he's bisected.
it's true. This guy's got range.
Yeah.
Our sources paint a picture of someone deeply unconventional, born in 1945, graduated from the prestigious Wharton School of Business,
Wow.
and then swerves hard into activism.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what sparks that turn.
Well, the Vietnam War seems to have been a real turning point for him.
Okay.
It ignited his activism, and it also solidified his belief in seeing beyond the surface.
Right.
And this is a theme that really permeates all of his work. It's as if he developed this, almost uncanny knack for spotting the undercurrents that other people miss,
Yeah.
whether it's in politics, economics, or technology.
So it's not just about rejecting what is, but seeing the potential for what could be.
Exactly.
And this early activism in the 1970s put him on a collision course with some pretty powerful entities.
Oh, yeah.
Big oil, biotechnology. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't afraid to take on these giants, which earned him the label of the most hated man in science.
Oh, wow.
Now, was that a badge of honor or a sign that he was off base?
Well, that's the core question, isn't it? Was he a Luddite resisting progress?
Right.
Or was he a prophet warning us about a path that's fraught with unintended consequences? If we look deeper, we see this consistent concern in Rifkin's work, and that is the ethical implications of technology,
Okay.
particularly how easily these advancements can be used in ways that ultimately harm humanity or the planet.
So not anti-science, but pro-responsible innovation.
E-
It makes me think of those sci-fi movies where you've got the cool tech and it turns out to have this dark side.
Right.
Is Rifkin the guy sounding the alarm before we go full-blown dystopia?
I think that's a great analogy.
Okay.
He's constantly pushing us to consider the long-term implications of our choices, especially when it comes to powerful new technologies.
Mm-hmm.
And nowhere is that more apparent than in his concept of the Third Industrial Revolution,
Okay.
which goes way beyond just a theory.
Yeah.
This is an idea that's actually shaped policies on a global scale.
The Third Industrial Revolution, it's one of those buzzwords that gets thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean?
Right.
Give us the breakdown. How does this thing work?
So at its core, the Third Industrial Revolution is a blueprint for a post-carbon economy built on renewable energy,
Okay.
decentralized power, and a profoundly interconnected global infrastructure. Think smart grids where energy flows just like information,
Right.
and communities are generating their own power through renewables.
It sounds almost utopian, especially since he published this back in 2011.
Yeah,
But here we are in 2025,
I know.
and some of these things are happening.
They are.
Are we actually seeing elements of Rifkin's vision coming to life?
The shift to renewables is accelerating. The circular economy concept is gaining traction. And the digitalization of, everything is creating possibilities for collaboration and resource management that were unimaginable just a few decades ago.
It's wild to think about how much pushback he got at the time.
I know.
I'm seeing articles calling him a doomsayer, a radical, but yet he kept going,
He did.
writing book after book, never letting the criticism silence his message.
Right.
That takes some serious resilience.
Yeah, it does.
And resilience is at the very heart of his latest work, The Age of Resilience, published in 2022.
Yes.
He argues that our obsession with metrics like GDP is blinding us to the real crisis, the degradation of our planet and our social well-being.
Exactly.
This book is a call to action, urging us to rethink our very definition of progress.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying, hey, the game is rigged. We need a whole new set of rules.
Mm-hmm.
But what does this resilient future actually look like?
Right.
Is it some kind of ecotopia where we're all living in tree houses and bartering for vegetables?
It's less about a specific aesthetic and more about a fundamental shift in values.
Okay.
Rifkin talks about moving from a productivity-obsessed society to one that is focused on regenerativity. Imagine a world where we're working with nature, not against it.
Okay.
We're restoring ecosystems and building systems that support both human and planetary well-being.
Right.
He calls it rewilding the Earth,
Rewilding the earth.
which sounds radical until you consider how much we've already disrupted the natural balance.
Okay, that's where it starts to click for me.
Yeah.
It's not about rejecting technology. It's about using it intentionally to create a more harmonious relationship with the planet.
Exactly.
But how do we get from these doom and gloom predictions to actually building this better future?
Yeah.
What's the first step?
Rifkin argues that the first step is to question everything.
Hmm.
We need to challenge the assumptions that we've inherited about progress, about technology, even about our own place in the world.
Okay.
Once we start asking those tough questions, we can begin to envision the alternatives.
So it's less about having all the answers and more about having the right questions.
Exactly.
That's pretty empowering, actually.
Yeah.
It suggests we all have a role to play in shaping the future,
We do.
not just passively accepting whatever's coming down the pike.
That's right.
So it's less about having all the answers and more about having the right questions.
Exactly.
That's pretty empowering, actually.
Yeah.
It suggests we all have a role to play in shaping the future,
We do.
not just passively accepting whatever's coming down the pike.
That's right.
So we've been exploring these ideas of Jeremy Rifkin, a thinker who challenges us to rethink our relationship with technology, with the planet, with each other.
Yeah.
Now, how do we translate these big ideas into action?
Right.
Are there real-world examples of Rifkin's Age of Resilience actually in action?
Absolutely. While Rifkin's vision might sound kind of radical to some, you can actually see it taking shape in various communities around the world. It's not about some far-off utopia, but practical solutions that are being implemented right now.
Give us some specifics.
Okay.
What does this resilient future look like on the ground in actual communities?
So one of the key shifts that Rifkin advocates is moving from an ownership-based economy to an access-based one.
Okay?
This challenges that deeply ingrained idea that we need to own everything.
Okay, that's interesting, but I think we need to unpack that a bit.
Yeah.
What does an access-based economy actually look like in practice?
So imagine subscribing to a mobility service instead of owning a car.
Right.
Or accessing a shared workshop with 3D printers and high-tech tools instead of each person buying their own that sit idle most of the time. It's about maximizing the use of resources while minimizing waste.
So instead of everyone having a power drill gathering dust in their basement, you could just borrow one when you need it from a community tool library.
Exactly.
And those are popping up everywhere these days.
Yeah.
It makes sense both from an economic and environmental standpoint.
Exactly. And this concept extends far beyond just tools.
Okay.
Think about community gardens providing locally grown food or shared energy microgrids that are powered by rooftop solar panels.
Right.
It's about building more resilient and interconnected systems that benefit everyone.
It sounds great, but what about those who argue that this reliance on these shared services make us vulnerable?
Right.
What if the system goes down?
That's a crucial point.
What if access is suddenly restricted or becomes too expensive?
And Rifkin addresses that directly.
Okay.
He emphasizes the need for distributed, decentralized systems. So, yes, you have access to shared resources, but you also have the knowledge and tools to be more self-sufficient at the individual and community level. Think rooftop solar panels with battery storage, localized food production, and even community-based skill shares.
So it's not about putting all our eggs in one basket.
Right.
It's about diversifying our resources and building resilience at multiple levels,
Exact.
from personal preparedness to these robust local networks.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like a blend of hyper-connected tech with a return to more traditional skills and community interdependence.
It is a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
It is.
Rifkin argues that technology, when used wisely, can help us create more resilient and localized systems.
Okay.
Think about online platforms connecting people with locally sourced food or apps coordinating neighborhood tool sharing.
This is starting to feel less like pie-in-the-sky idealism and more like a tangible roadmap for the future. Are there any real-world examples of communities successfully implementing these ideas?
Definitely, we're seeing pockets of this age of resilience all over the world.
Okay, give us an example.
Take the urban farming initiatives in Detroit, where vacant lots are being transformed into these thriving community gardens, increasing food security and fostering a sense of connection.
Okay.
Or look at the community-owned renewable energy projects in Germany,
Right.
where citizens are collectively investing in solar and wind power, generating clean energy and economic benefits for their communities.
It's encouraging to see these examples, but I'm sure there are challenges and pushback.
Oh, of course.
It's one thing to talk about changing the system.
Yeah.
It's another to actually do it.
Right. Anytime you're challenging the status quo, you're going to encounter resistance.
Yeah.
But what's striking is that many of these initiatives are being driven from the ground up by individuals and communities who are tired of waiting for top-down solutions.
Right.
And they're taking matters into their own hands.
You know, a lot of the criticisms I've read about Rifkin dismisses him as being too utopian, too idealistic.
Yeah.
But isn't a bit of idealism what we need right now?
It might be.
If we can't even imagine a better future, how are we going to create it?
That's where Rifkin's work really shines.
Yeah.
He provides that spark of possibility, that invitation to imagine a world that operates differently. And he backs it up with concrete examples showing us that change is not only possible, it's already happening.
It's not about blind optimism. It's about informed hope.
Exactly.
Rifkin lays out the challenges, but also shows us the path forward, not just at a global level, but in ways that we can actually apply to our own life.
That's right.
And that brings us to a crucial question.
Okay.
How do we as individuals navigate this transition to a more resilient future?
Yeah.
How can we become active participants, not just passive observers?
Right.
All right, let's get personal.
Okay.
If Jeremy Rifkin were sitting here with us right now,
Yeah.
what's the one question he would ask our listener?
I think he would ask, what kind of ancestor do you want to be?
It makes you think about the long game, doesn't it?
It does.
It's not just about us right now, but the legacy we leave for the generations that come after us.
Yeah, that question really challenges us to look beyond our immediate desires and consider the world we're creating for those who come after us.
It's a powerful way to frame the choices we make every day.
It is. It's about recognizing that our actions have consequences that ripple far beyond our own lifetimes.
And it brings up a point we touched on earlier, this idea of shifting from a consumer mindset to a citizen mindset.
Right.
It's almost like we need to rediscover what it means to be a responsible member of a community, a steward of the planet, not just someone who's constantly chasing the next purchase.
That's a crucial aspect of building resilience.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that our well-being is interconnected with the well-being of the planet and our communities. It's about moving beyond a purely transactional relationship with the world and embracing a more reciprocal one.
So how do we start making that shift?
Right.
It can feel overwhelming to think about changing our entire worldview.
It can't.
Are there any tangible steps we can take to cultivate this citizen mindset and contribute to a more resilient future?
Well, one simple but profound practice is to cultivate a sense of gratitude.
Gratitude.
It sounds almost too easy,
Yeah.
but intentionally taking time to appreciate what we already have can help us break free from that constant cycle of wanting more.
It's like that old saying, comparison is the thief of joy.
It is.
We get so caught up in what we lack that we forget to appreciate the good things we already have. I'm definitely guilty of that.
We all are to some degree.
Yeah.
It's almost built into our culture, but shifting our focus from what we're missing to what we have can be incredibly liberating.
Right.
It allows us to find contentment in the present moment rather than constantly striving for something just out of reach.
So gratitude is a foundation for resilience?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. What else can we do? I'm
So
also thinking about our discussion on technology. It seems like a double-edged sword.
it is.
It can drive consumption, but it can also connect us in new ways and facilitate things like sharing resources.
Technologies itself is neutral. It's how we choose to use it that determines its impact.
Right.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Rifkin argues that technology can actually play a key role in building a more resilient future.
So we don't need to ditch our smartphones and go off the grid.
No,
I can still enjoy my streaming services and online shopping guilt-free.
it's not about rejecting technology altogether. It's about using it consciously and intentionally.
Okay.
For instance, those same smartphones that fuel our online shopping habits can also connect us with local farmers markets, community events, or neighbors offering to share tools or resources.
So instead of buying a new power drill I only need once a year, I could use an app to see if someone in my neighborhood would lend me theirs.
Exactly.
That would save me money, storage space, and reduce waste. It's a win-win.
Exactly. And that's just one example.
Right.
Technology can empower us to create more localized, self-sufficient systems. Imagine apps coordinating neighborhood ride-sharing online platforms, facilitating the exchange of skills and knowledge, or sensors monitoring local microgrids to optimize energy distribution.
It's like using the power of connectivity to strengthen our local communities and reduce our reliance on global supply chains that could be disrupted by, well, just about anything these days.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that brings us to another key aspect of resilience: connecting with nature.
Okay.
It's not just about protecting the environment, it's about recognizing that we are nature.
Right.
We've become so disconnected from the natural world that we've forgotten our interdependence with it.
Yeah, I get that. I'm definitely a happier person when I've spent some time outdoors, a hike in the woods, a walk on the beach, even just sitting in my garden for a bit. It does something for my soul.
Yeah.
But how does that connect to building resilience, practically speaking?
Well, spending time in nature has been shown to reduce stress, boost creativity, and improve our overall well-being.
Okay.
It also fosters a sense of awe and wonder, reminding us that we're part of something much larger than ourselves.
So it's not just about getting fresh air and exercise.
Right.
It's about shifting our perspective, reminding ourselves that we're not just isolated individuals, but part of this intricate web of life that sustains us.
Exactly. And that realization can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It fosters a sense of responsibility for the planet and a desire to protect it.
Mm-hmm.
It also helps us connect with others who share that same sense of connection, building stronger communities and fostering a sense of shared purpose.
So connecting with nature strengthens our own resilience, but it also strengthens our communities.
Yes.
It's like we're all threads in this tapestry. And the stronger each thread is, the more resilient the whole tapestry becomes.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Thank you.
And it underscores a key point that Rifkin makes. We can't do this alone.
Mm.
Building a resilient future requires collaboration, cooperation, and a willingness to support each other.
It's a reminder that we're all in this together.
We are.
And that brings us back to the question that kicked off this part of our deep dive. What kind of ancestor do you want to be?
Right.
It's a question that invites us to think beyond ourselves and consider the long-term impact of our actions.
It's a question that challenges us to step into our roles as responsible citizens, as stewards of the planet, and as co-creators of a future that is not only sustainable, but also just equitable and filled with possibility.
And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the work of Jeremy Rifkin.
Wow.
We've covered a lot of ground, from his unconventional journey to his groundbreaking ideas.
Yeah.
And even explored some real-world examples of his vision in action.
We did.
But the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to continue exploring Rifkin's work and consider how his ideas can inspire you to create positive change in your own life and community.
Remember, the future isn't predetermined. It's something that we actively shape through our choices, our actions, and our willingness to imagine a different way of being in the world.
So what kind of ancestor will you choose to be?